Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. You know, I often start interviews with the following phrase: boy, oh boy, you are in for a real treat today. And sometimes I mean it and sometimes I don't. Listen, today you are in for a real treat. Mr. Calvin Correli is in the house. He is a spiritual teacher, serial entrepreneur, overall amazing human being. Calvin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David. Did I put that in the bio, the overall amazing human being?
I added that spontaneously after finding out a little bit about your incredible background. So take us back to the ugly. Take us back to the deep, dark, ugly days of kind of how you got started and this amazing personal transformation that you've been on since 2008.
Yeah, lots of ugly. Overall, I felt like I was, for much of my life, just in a position where I was f***ed up and my life sucked. It was like, it was never like I wasn't on drugs. It wasn't like, rolling on the floor in my own vomit kind of stuff. Well, I have done that, but it wasn't exactly like that. But just on the inside, I was just miserable. And I think the low point was probably in 2008, where everything was crashing. The one recurring theme for me was always like there's some financial fire that I needed to fight. Right? It was like, oh crap! Like we bought a house and we couldn't afford it.
Well, I'm curious. What were you doing professionally at that time?
At that time, I was pretty much almost always self-employed. I had 3 jobs in my life. Number 1, I worked for my mom's software company. Number 2, I worked for my dad's manufacturing business. And then number 3, I worked for a .com startup in Boston. So those are the only 3 jobs I've ever held. Yeah, so I was self-employed. In the beginning, my business did really well. And then I kind of faltered or like didn't really go very far. And in fact, it was a consulting firm and I'd scaled it back to just me, from 13 people at the max to just me. And at this point, we bought a house. My now ex and we bought a house, and there was a technicality. So the mortgage we couldn't get a regular mortgage. It was a bank loan. And now it was like 3 times more expensive than we had budgeted with, and we couldn't afford it. And I had to borrow money from my dad for the house and from my mom for living expenses. And I just felt miserable. And all the contracts that were lined up were all crashing. Like I'd worked for Greenpeace International as like a solo guy for quite a while. And they were like, sorry, we've outsourced your job to India now. And other contracts I'd lined up just all crashed. And that was a major low point. And it was also what sparked me then to ask the big question of, what is it I'm here to do? Why am I on this planet? So something good came out of it.
So let's talk about this, because I personally have a big problem with the whole Simon Sinek start with why, only because it's become such a cliche, right? Mm-hmm. And every consultant and every spiritual teacher and every personal development guru always goes back to, well, you got to find your why. You got to find your why. And some people call it purpose, and some people call it mission, and some people call it, what was I put here on the planet to do? It's a very easy, as you well know, and I want to talk to you about your process around this. It's a very easy question to ask, and it is a very difficult answer to provide. So whenever someone tries to boil it down, it's like, well, just go back to your why. It's like, dude, I've been on the planet for 53 years or however old they are, and I still haven't figured it out. What was your process of introspection and sort of personal reflection? Give us the process that you used to ultimately come to your answer. And of course, I'd love to know your answer.
Before I do that, let me just say, because I think I completely agree with you that it's something there's a lot of confusion around. It's very easy to kind of get tripped up and feel like it has to be something like big and like, audacious thing out there. The way I think about it is, first off, our purpose in life is to be right here, right now, right? On some level, that's all we need to know. just be present right here in this moment. That is your purpose. The purpose is not like, oh, out in the future, at some point I will have achieved blah, 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 blah. Wrong track, right? Wrong track. However, where it gets really interesting is there is already a why that gets you up in the morning. So think of it rather than like some big mission statement that you want to put on your website and share with everybody. It's like, what actually motivates you? What actually drives you, right? What actually gives you energy? And this can be very personal to you. It might not be something that you ever share with anyone, but it's the place that you go to when you're like, oh, crap. And like, oh, things are falling apart. It's like, remember why. Like maybe it's a former version of yourself that was really in pain and you want to help that person. You want to help other people like that. And that's what actually drives you. That's a very common one for a lot of people.
Tell us a little bit about this light bulb moment. Like, so you're kind of hitting bottom. All the signals on the dashboard are red and blinking fast. How do you pull yourself out of something like that? And then talk to us a little bit about some of the steps along the way to the big aha, the big light bulb moment.
Yeah. So Fred, what I did was I pulled all the books that I had in my bookshelf that had anything to do with purpose and meaning and things like that. And I remember there's a book that had that title about finding purpose or something. I can't remember the author. I remember there's some old Tony Robbins stuff that I bought from his infomercials years before and different things. And then I just like, okay, they all seem to have a similar pattern of like, what did you dream of becoming when you were a young person? There's usually a clue there. What are some of the moments that stand out for you when you're a kid, when you're in school, when you're in college, and so on? What are some activities that give you energy versus activities that drain you of energy? What are kind of the types of people that you enjoy being with versus the types of people that you don't enjoy being with? I just literally took all these questions and wrote down for myself. And I was like, okay, let me go answer. And some things that I noticed was that I was studying computer science or at this point I was done, but I was like in that tech world. And I realized that world, most people there didn't give me any energy. That was draining for me to be around. But people who are into personal growth, spiritual growth, that kind of stuff, that gave me energy. So that was a clue. Entrepreneurs in general give me energy. A big moment was realizing in college, I was part of the party committee. So we would organize the parties for everybody. Yeah. And I actually really loved crafting this whole experience for people and kind of being behind the scenes and just planning it, but also running it and executing it. And my favorite position was at the bar at these events. And these were not very advanced bars. We had two products, and there were Tuborg and Carlsberg. This is in Denmark. They're the two major brands of beer. That's it. So people would come and they would just like, it would be either one or the other, and it would be the same price is the same. So it was like very easy. But I would serve that beer with so much presence and care as possible. And I just like really be into it, right? Like, you see, most people are just like, they'll just like whatever, sling it across they don't care about what they're doing. But I realized that for me, I love serving people and just connecting with them. And later on, I got this language around it of having moments of intimacy with people that they didn't expect in a context where they didn't expect it. And that fires me up. And so that's a huge part of my why, is that moment, that energy right there. But as I was doing this bigger exercise of all these different moments, what popped out at me is like, oh crap. I think like it was like a download kind of moment. I'm here to integrate spirituality and entrepreneurship. So the whole journey of healing our wounding and our traumas, of clearing out our thoughts and our beliefs and like that whole mental furnishing that happens up there, connecting with a purpose, a meaning, a why, transitioning from living in our head to living in our heart and, living in the present, not in the past or the future. As entrepreneurs, as we share our unique gifts with the world, that's what I'm here to study, to learn, to master, and then to teach and share with others.
We interrupt this interview with an important announcement. If you're committed to better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees, get over to doitselling.com right now and grab a copy of my new book. That's the deal, kids. Grab a copy of the new book and then get all the bonuses, companion tools, trainings, and downloads at doitselling.com. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. That's how it works. I'll see you over there.
So I love so much of everything that you're saying. And I want to go back also to when you scaled your consulting company from 13 down to 1, because one of the big headlines on your personal website right now, and you mentioned it, I love creating amazing things with teams of talented and engaged people. So when you said, hey, I got this team of 13 people, but you know what? I'm hitting rock bottom. The finances aren't where they need to go. I need to unscale, descale. Was that sort of counterproductive, or were they the wrong people? Were they the wrong people and you just knew that you needed to start with a clean slate?
It was the wrong model. It was the wrong business model. So it was a services company, and I never wanted to be a services business. I wanted to be a product business. I knew that. I wanted something that could scale. And my model was do the consulting, have the consulting pay for the product development. That was my vision. Have the consulting, we'll learn from that, and then we'll use that learning and the revenue and the resources to actually pay for product. The problem was product was freaking hard. When I was doing consulting, I would always be backseat driving my clients and be like, oh, poo-poo, that's stupid. If I were me, I would do this. That's so much better, so much smarter. And then when it came to me actually trying to build a product from scratch, I'm like, whoa, where do I start? What does this thing want to be? I have no idea. It was crazy. And that's what linked into the whole, I didn't know what the hell I wanted, right? So it's just like, oh, maybe I could do this product. Maybe I could do that. So I was doing all these things or pointing in different directions. I was like, well, we should build a product management tool. So we started building a product management tool on this platform. It was like a jumbled mess. It was nothing. And then my my friend, this young guy, he's no longer as young. David Heinemeier Hansen is a programmer who created like a product called Basecamp. And then, a web framework called Ruby on Rails. And I'm like, oh crap, they did like what we wanted to do in product management, only like a million times better. And by the way, we were working on an open source framework at that time. And then he came out with Rails. I'm like, he did what I wanted to do with this open source framework, only like a million times better. So I was like, all right, scratch that. Well, just like I actually built the third ever Ruby on Rails production app or software. Because I immediately just called David and was like, hey, dude, come on over to the office. Show me everything you've got here. Like, this is amazing. So it wasn't that, right? And I remember that someone approached me and was like, hey, we have this idea for like a job site, like a monster.com or Indeed or something. But the whole thing is that there's a bonus if you refer the person who ends up getting the job. The theory was that there are lots of great talent out there who are not looking at job sites, right?
Yeah.
Like the best people are not searching for a job. So how do we activate them? Well, maybe someone in their network is looking and makes money by referring them. And then it's a good
Calvin,
model.
I'm curious, did that eventually become Job Prize?
No, I've never heard of that one. No, this is way back when in Denmark, and this ended up going nowhere and ended up becoming really complicated and really, really hard. And maybe someone did it now. And there's another thing about collaborative publishing, but the point was that there was like all these different ideas that sounded cool, but there's no heart in it for me. It was just like, oh, this could be a good money machine. This could be a good money machine. This could be a good money machine, but there's nothing of like Calvin in it.
So tell us, how did you eventually land on the product or multiple products actually that are in the portfolio today? Kind of give us the timeline. And what was first, what was second, what was third? And there may have been some experiments that didn't make the cut that are no longer with us, but walk us through the portfolio.
It was exactly that realization that spirituality and entrepreneurship, that cross-section is what I'm all about.
Yeah.
That led me to realize I need to teach this to others, because every single entrepreneur I know, they're struggling with the same things, and we all need that framework. And so I need to start teaching this, coaching this, but how? Like, I'm a programmer. Like, I've done a consulting. Like, I don't know. workshops or seminars or like what is, I don't even know what a seminar is. I've heard the word. I don't know what the hell it is. It's not something we do in Denmark. I'm sure they do, but whatever. I didn't know what it was. So I started Googling and I found this whole world of online courses. I found this dude named Jeff Walker, and he had a thing called Product Launch Formula 2.0, which was a bunch of CDs or something that were actually, no, I think that was with the first online version, but he also shipped you the Product Launch Formula 1.0 on CDs or something. And I was like, oh, snap. Like online courses, I can do that. Like, why do I want to do that? Especially because I was still like this super introvert nerd and super scared of people. So the idea of actually doing a seminar and standing up in front of people and teaching stuff was like terrifying to me. But if I could record it and I could do some edits and just put it out there and not have to look anybody in the eyes, then that felt much safer. So that was my ticket. I was like, that's what I got to do. And then Simplero came out of that because I realized, you need to use one tool for the website and another for the email marketing, and then something for the shopping cart, and then another thing for the membership site, and then something for the video hosting. I was like, this is a freaking nightmare. Let me just write the software myself that I want to use that keeps it all simple and all in one place.
And then tell us about some of the other adventures. I know that you have is it a supplement?
Yeah.
So you've got a supplement business, you've got so much other cool stuff going on. Notable Nation and We Can Do This, which is about the politics here in 2024 and beyond. And talk to us about how some of those other side projects became projects and then how you're managing all of this today.
Well, I mean, the short answer is poorly, but I've had to learn a lesson of focus. But the thing is, I'm like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs can probably relate to this, like being multi-passionate, right? We're passionate about multiple things. This fall, actually, my heart was acting a little weird. I'd get dizzy when I stood up and things like that. And I was like some heart, like palpitations, I think they call it. I'm not sure what that word means, but I've heard it. And I think it's probably that. But it was like, I felt like my heart was beating a little loudly. And so I went to get my heart checked and looks like everything's fine. And I'm not worried about it whatsoever. But what that made me realize is, once again, never had a useful experience with any medical doctor whatsoever. Maybe it'll happen, but so far in almost 50 years, it hasn't happened. So we'll see. But number two was like, if there really was something with my heart and like my number was up in the next, 6 to 12 months, what would I really want to leave behind? And as much as I love software is my first love. My dad taught me how to code. My mom started a software company. Like software is definitely my first love. The legacy I want to leave is not software. It is healing people at scale, helping people out of suffering and misery because so many people are really struggling. And a huge part of that also is health. So I've been on a journey with health myself. I've never been in terrible health, but also not in great health. And it was like, my mindset was, this is what matters, right? My brain. And all of this is just a necessary evil to kind of transport this thing around from thing to thing. And I needed my hands so I could code on the keyboard, right? But really, those are the only two things that matter. And learning to be in my body, to open my body, to start to feel and to develop my body physically, including one of the big shifts was I have a mentor who some 6-7 years ago, my wife and I were working with him and he was like, our marriage was really struggling. We were struggling in marriage. And he was like, your guys' problem is that Calvin, you're like 80% feminine, your masculine is only 20%. And Naomi, my wife, you're the opposite. You're like 80% masculine and only 20% feminine. And we got to flip that around. And so that whole journey of opening my masculine side and helping heal that very, very wounded boy that kept me stuck at a 20% masculine level has been a huge part of that whole health journey as well. And so I'm deeply passionate about health that doesn't involve any pharma, like any drugs, any caffeine, any sugar, any like just a purely natural healing. Like the only thing that can heal the human body is the human body. We just need to get out of the way by, not throwing toxins at it, like whether mental or spiritual or energetic or physical or biochemical. And so, so there's that whole health side. I actually call it Simplero Health. My strategy here is that Simplero is my version of Virgin. So there's going to be Simplero, all of the things eventually. That's my big game plan. So on the health side, it's the two offers are currently is this body meal replacement, which I had right before we started here, by the way, and then a workout. So it's all inspired by that mentor I mentioned. His name is Andrew, and he's out of a family. His grandfather invented a body therapy modality that's been huge for my life. And his father did it his whole life. And has trained over 1,000 therapists. And he has 5 kids that are all doing it as well. So it's a real generational thing. He's the one that created Body Meal. He's the one that created the workouts. He's the one that's taught me so much about, how to be human and how to be healthy.
So this is so fascinating. I think entrepreneurs and founders are sort of split into 2 camps. There's the camp where I'm going to do it all and I've got a support team behind me. And then there is more of a partnering, collaborative, I don't have all the answers. I'm not the smartest person in the room. And I'm going to partner with this one on the supplements. I'm going to partner with that one on the exercise regimen. So clearly, I think you're in camp 2. Would you agree?
I would say a bit of both.
Okay.
On what it is. Yeah.
So how do you navigate that where you're willing to kind of share the spotlight, share the focus, share the revenue, share the everything while still maintaining, this is still your livelihood, your business, your future, your legacy?
So maybe I'm misunderstanding your categories, but the way I think about it is like, what's my genius? What's your genius? What's their genius, right? So let's have everybody stay in their genius. That goes for me on my team as well. I want everybody on my team to be in their genius. My company is definitely organized around my genius, right? Simplero, my coaching business, like that's organized around my genius. My genius is around the purpose piece, like really helping people align with their core essence, their core reason for existing. Yeah. My genius is around simplifying things. I'm really, really good at taking things that are big and complex and just distilling it down to its essence and then communicating that. And I'm really good at like seeing ahead and seeing vision, seeing what's possible. And so in this case, like I am never, ever, ever, ever going to get anywhere close to the genius that Andrew has when it comes to the body and the healing and the body therapy and all that stuff. But I appreciate his genius. What I can do is I can add my genius of simplifying it and communicating about it in a way that people can actually get and understand and then bring it out. My genius is not is actually the marketing piece, the setting the world on fire, if you will, with your message kind of thing. Like that's not really my genius. So that's something that I need to partner with as well. My genius is definitely not like keeping the trains running on track and maintaining the details and all that stuff. I need team to handle that, right?
Right.
So, but I definitely do believe in structuring my company around my genius and my weaknesses and then building that, like scaling that. And I think that's a winning model.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I forgot to ask you back when you created your first course, you built Simplero because you needed a platform to run the course and you didn't find anything else that was kind of all-in-one, simple, push button, etc. But what was the course? What was the topic of that first course?
It was called Computer Zen. So here's the thing. So when I got into this whole online marketing thing, what I realized was that in Denmark, where I lived then, in 2008, there is no market for spirituality and entrepreneurship, right? It wasn't like, whoa, like at that time, I literally thought I was the one that had coined and invented that whole concept of bringing the two together. I didn't see anything on that topic. I searched Amazon's for book on it. I found one book that said conscious entrepreneurship or something like that. And it was there, but it was pretty weak sauce. But so it was like, all right, there's another person who had this idea. It turns out one of my mentors and now friends, Gay Hendricks, actually had written about that, but it wasn't available in book form at the time. And now it's like really a thing. But back then it was totally not a thing that anybody talked about, right? And so what people did want was they wanted more clients, right? They make more money. Right. And so I was like, well, I just spent a lot of time studying this whole online marketing and how to get clients. Why don't I help people do that? And then we'll talk about the whole spiritual side as part of that process. And that turned out to be a winning model. And the first version was computer Zen, because my observation was that there are two kinds of people when it comes to tech, to use your two kinds of people way of looking at it. But they're the kind that has this like, this is how it ought to be. And when things don't work that way, I'm just going to keep banging my head against the wall, hoping that if I bang hard enough, it's eventually going to start behaving the way I want it to. And it usually doesn't work. AKA my dad. The other kind is the one that's like, all right, here's what I want, but like, here's what's available. Let me see what we can work with. And maybe if it can't be exactly how I want it, let's flow with it and figure out how we can get something even greater done than I had in mind. That's the Zen approach to it. So that was computer Zen. So it's all about how to do your basic like website, lead magnet, opt-in, email marketing, and like, building your information business and all that stuff. But I called it computer Zen because what I had were people who were struggling with how to do all the tech stuff. And that was where I was strong. And so I taught them how to do that in a very Zen-like, flow-like way. And so Simplero was actually originally Zen Billing. That was the name. And then some big company that may or may not be involved in help desk software titled something with Zen, whose founders I actually happen to know because they are also from Denmark and they've partied in my house and whatnot. They threatened me with a lawsuit or with a like cease and desist letter over the moniker Zen in the name. So I had to, I chose to let go of that.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, let's talk about healing the world here a little bit, because I know that you've got your Notable Nation project. I would love to hear about that. And you're also working on the We Can Do This book. So talk about kind of the political divides that we're experiencing here around the globe and what Notable Nation is and does, and then a little bit about the new book coming out.
All right. So you're putting me on the spot here. It looks like I probably should update my website a little bit because Notable Nation is a little bit dormant. It started with this realization. So in Denmark, I was always more right-wing than left-wing. Like Denmark is very, social democratic country. And I was like, it's funny. The name my parents gave me was not Calvin. It was Lars. I never liked my name. I moved to the US, especially my last name was complicated. I met my wife who was into numerology. I was like, screw that, let's do it. So I just went to numerologist, changed the whole thing. And I ended up picking the name Calvin because of Calvin Coolidge. Because Calvin Coolidge had this quote that says, nothing in the world will take the place of persistence. Genius will not, talent will not, education will not, only determination and perseverance are omnipotent. And that quote was so instrumental for me in all those years that I was struggling. I was so grateful that he said those words and that they somehow made their way to me. I would read that quote over and over and over again to just be like, there's hope, there's hope, there's hope. Like, keep going, we'll get somewhere. And it worked out. And so I was so grateful I picked his name for mine. What I didn't know at the time is that one of his other famous quotes is, or I don't know if it's famous actually, it's the one that resonated with me, is normal people can take care of themselves. Normal people can take care of themselves. We do not need the government to do all kinds, like normal people should not need the government for literally anything. Like, sure, build a road, right? But we shouldn't need the government for anything because a normal, healthy adult can take care of themselves and their families. No problem. We've created a world of people who've forgotten how to, right? Where we need the government to do all kinds of stuff for us. And I think that is unhealthy. Denmark is very much in that camp of like, government takes care of everything. So naturally, I leaned right-wing in Denmark. However, when I moved to the States, I was like, well, the Republicans are bigots and racists and evil and bad. So obviously, I'm a Democrat because all my friends are. That's what you are when you're in tech, of course. And then Trump ran for president. He broke the system. And for me, it was late night comedy. Like, I was so bummed when George W. got reelected. To me, George W. was the evil himself, right? I'm still not a fan, but he invaded Iraq and all of that, which that's the only demo I've ever gone to. I was like, that's not a good idea, guys. Like, Iraq has nothing to do with this. Like, and then, in 2000, it was like, well, it was this, like, it ended up being a Supreme Court decision and it was disputed. In 2004, when he got reelected, there is no excuse. People knew what the they were voting for and they still voted for him. I'm like, oh crap, like deep identity crisis. So I was watching, and these years I was a Danish citizen living in Denmark, but in my mind I was expat because I lived in the States and I moved back to Denmark and I missed the US. I didn't really want to leave. And so I would watch The Daily Show religiously. In the beginning, I had to BitTorrent it because you couldn't get it over there. There's no legal way to get it. So BitTorrent for the win. And I watched every single episode. It was what kept me having faith in America, right? And so naturally, I was indoctrinated in that whole way of seeing it. And so after Trump, I think it was after he got elected, especially, like late night comedy stopped being funny. They were so busy making like really dumb. Like, I think the main thing was like the way they always went after Eric Trump was like, dude, that's not funny. That's just mean. But they had to do it because they had to manufacture, fake to get at him, right? That got me to way more interested in looking deeper into politics. Yeah. And as I did, I realized that a lot of my beliefs were around how things worked and policies and all that stuff were broken. In 2016, I was like, yay, Bernie, because like he had that energy of like change and difference. And then, Calvin in 2017 is like actually reading what he says. And like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not how the world works, right? It's like going that step deeper. And the big realization was that my objectives didn't change. Like the ultimate outcomes of what I want to see hadn't changed. It was just my belief about how to get there. So what I wanted then and now is, a world that is safe and prosperous, a people that's happy and healthy, and, a planet can sustain human life for millennia to come. The same really high level objectives I wanted. I was just realized maybe there are smarter ways to get there. So the whole idea in Notable Nation and with the book, which I wrote the whole damn manuscript, and then the last election cycle got too damn noisy. And I was like, you know what? This is not the path. And we can talk about what I think the path is, but I still want to get that book out, but it needs a serious rewrite. But anyway, the whole concept, the whole idea is like, let's get together and think about and get agreement on like, what is the ultimate outcome we want? And then we can have informed conversations about the ways in which we get there. And we can do experiments if we're not sure. Let's test things out. Now, of course, the problem is like that requires people to be operating at a certain energetic level and cognitive level, which is not really where we're at. So there is a different kind of angle of attack that's necessary to move things forward.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there.
It's funny. I'm not a student of this. I have no data around this, but my personal opinion, it's reminiscent of what you were saying when you were going into therapy with your spouse about 20%, 80%, 80%, 20%. My personal opinion about Republicans, Democrats, left wing, right wing, is there are on both sides, there's 20% that are extremist on one side or the other. 80% have some common views and some common ground. Other side, 20% extremist in the other direction. 80%, they want clean water. They want good schools. They want a future that they can be optimistic about. Right. I think you take 80% of the left, you take 80% of the right, and that 160% is where we can have some sort of civilized dialogue and some possible forward movement. So 100%. I'm curious, what do you feel is the path as you've been thinking and processing this now?
I think you're 100% right on that. And that's a big part of it too. The bigger thing, of course, is like, where do we get all of our opinions from, right? Because like what I realized too is that the whole Democrat versus Republican is just TV show, right? It's not reality. Like I'm sure you've heard of the Uni Party, right? It's since J. Edgar Hoover, which was the first director of the FBI, we know that the FBI, their primary business, if you will, is to have dirt on every single person in Congress and every single person of import in politics, right? So that they control them with basically sex and drugs, right? So they have someone on everybody, and I'm sure that the Mossad does as well, and the CIA, and like especially the U.S. Congress, right? Because the budget is so huge, which is another good reason why we need that budget to be way smaller, right? Like, so everybody has something on them. So like politics is not even like, this is not politics, right? Whatever's happening is show business. The real decisions are made somewhere else. And so that's a huge problem, part of the problem. And that points at the solution, which is integrity. So I have lived my life out of integrity and in integrity. And I will tell you, there is night and day difference. And most people haven't tried living in integrity, right? Living into integrity means literally everything that you have ever done, you would be comfortable having that put on the front page of every newspaper, every major website in the world, that your spouse and your kids and your parents and your team and everybody knows everything you've ever done. And that doesn't mean that everything you've ever done is like good or kosher, but it means that you have peace with it. And if it were to come out, you would be like, yes, this is what I did and I own it and I don't feel ashamed about it or guilty about it or bad about it, because I know why I did it and I've done my healing and I know like I'm in a different place now and I'm completely at peace with it. Once you enter that state, it's a whole other world. And most people haven't experienced it. Once you have, you will never go back because it sucks. You realize how much energy it sucks out of you. And that's why people are like, I need my alcohol. I need my weed. I need my drugs, my hookers, whatever to get away from yourself. That's what all these drugs are about. Every addiction is about getting out of yourself, getting away from yourself. Favorite example is Purdue Pharma, the OxyContin. Yeah. The guy who approved at the FDA, who approved that drug and this like bogus label that it's not addictive and all that bullshit, he got a job at Purdue after getting paid. Guess how much?
Couple $1 million.
$350,000 a year salary. That was all it took to buy an FDA person. That's how cheap most people are. It's insane.
Yeah.
But James O'Keefe, former Project Veritas, super interesting guy. But he's had a clip go viral last week or something saying like, it doesn't matter if your price is, in this case, 350,000 or 10 million or 50 million or 100 million or 200 million. As long as that price is less than your life, you are for sale. And as long as that's the case, because there's so much money in this, they're going to find a way to buy the people that they need. So we need to train people. We need a generation of people who live in integrity, who have that feeling and who will not give that up for anything.
Well, it's funny because you look at like, why are people for sale, right? So why do they want 350, 5 million, 10 million? It's the same reason they want the drugs, the alcohol, and the hookers. It's just a higher level, right? Now I need the house. Now I need the vacation house in Switzerland. Now I need the Ferrari. Now I need all the toys.
Exactly. Well, because it never works, right? Like I had this huge example, huge for me. It was, so I moved from Denmark to the US in 99 to work for this Boston software company. They had and I felt on top of the world because I was making 6 figures all of a sudden, like straight out of college. And I was like, and then these guys, the company had this BMW Z3 Roadster. This is in 2001, and it was in California. And I would go and borrow it sometimes. And my girlfriend and I, we would just be riding down the California highway. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm on top of the world. It's the best. Moved back to Denmark. And in Denmark, cars are 3 times more expensive. So I couldn't afford one of those cars, but I dreamt about it for 10 years. So when I finally moved back to the States, I was like, I'm going to get one. Once I got myself, at that point, it was the Z4. I got it. I was on top of the world. I was like, oh my God. I was driving down the coast with my new girlfriend. And there was these 2 skaters. We're driving really slow in some suburban area. And then like one was like, oh, nice car. And then the other guy's like, yeah, nice chick. And I was like, yeah, look at me. Like, oh yeah. And I remember we went to a restaurant and parked in a parking lot, came back, ate, came back out. And I looked around. I was like, there's not a single car in this entire parking lot that I'd rather own than mine. I've got the best car in the world. It's so awesome. Oh my God. And then 2 weeks later, we're staying at a hotel, cars parked down front, their parking lot, come down the stairs, and I see the car and I didn't feel that. There wasn't that zing. There wasn't that. I was like, all right. Maybe it's just like, let me go back up again and down and look one more time. I was like, no, it was gone. It was gone. And so from that moment on, it was a great car, wonderful car, beautiful car, but it didn't have that. It didn't have that. And it lasted 14 days to the day. And I dreamt of it for 10 years and I got it and it lasted 14 days, right? So that's the whole thing where like all of that, like whether like all the money, all the hookers, all the drugs, all the is never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough because it's trying to fill a hole that cannot be filled with cars or strippers or drugs.
Oh my goodness. Well, holy smokes. This has been such a fantastic conversation. Let me ask you this as we're landing the plane here. If folks were to take one overarching concept from our fantastic conversation today, what do you hope that sort of parting thought or parting words of wisdom that you would like to leave folks with? What would that be?
Get out of the freaking rat race for self-improvement, thinking that if you improve enough, you're going to feel good enough. It ain't ever happening. And choose love today. Let go of all judgments about yourself, all judgment about the world needing to be any different, or you needing to be any different, or your life needing to be any different, your wife needs to be any different, or whatever it is. All that stuff, just love yourself, love what is, love where you are, and then figure out, what do I want to do from here? What do I want to contribute from a state of already being in excess, in surplus?
Yeah, very, very powerful. Now, that is a great wish, but I know that you also have some resources and some gifts and some things that we can put into the show notes that will help people make the first few steps towards that vision.
Totally.
So where can we send people? What links shall we drop into the show notes here?
Let me just preface it by saying the thing is like we need to get to a certain level of resources before we can even really fully get there, right? And so sometimes it's just like buying yourself the time to focus on the things that you want to do. For me, I was very lucky in that my software company allowed me the time to go do a lot of healing work because it was just there. It was running, it was working. And it bought some freed up time for me versus like having a day job, or like I see a lot of coaches or therapists that are doing a lot of one-on-one, which really burns them out. So what I have is, first, go to my Instagram, which is just my name, Calvin Correli, CalvinCorreli. It's a little tricky because some people think there's two L's, but there's not, because we made it up because it's all numerology. I'm not Italian. So Calvin Correli at Instagram, and then DM me and then tell me that you came from the Selling Show podcast, because I love knowing where you heard about me from. Share something that resonated. That's really cool too. And I have a resource, which is, if you DM me the words 10K on Instagram, I'll send you, I did a video. I mentioned my genius is like taking a lot of disparate information, a lot of complicated stuff, and then distilling it down to the core essence. I did that with coaches, which is our core audience in Simplero: coaches, course creators, service people, consultants, how to get to $10,000 a month consistently as a coach. Because that is a magic number that now you have a machine. And I'm not talking one-on-one, I'm talking group, so that you have time. That really frees up a lot of resources in your life to actually like focus on the deeper work. I remember the time I was living in India when Simplero, my software company, hit that level of about 10,000 a month. And I realized I never have to worry about paying rent, right? I never have to worry about money again. Like of course you will, but like at a different level, right? I don't have to worry about like, am I going to have money coming in? I just have money coming in. And that is a huge shift in me, because like it shifted into that legacy mode of contribution mode of like, hey, now that that's taken care of, what do I actually really want to give? So I really want for everybody to have that experience to get to that point. And so DM me 10K on Instagram at Calvin Correli, and I'll send you that video that I recorded for you.
Excellent. Amazing. Well, Calvin Correli, you are a rock star. I so much appreciate you. This has been one of the best, most meaningful, profoundly human interviews that we've ever done. I appreciate you so much for sharing with us.
I'm so glad to be here, David. It's just a great way to start the week.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.